Have you ever noticed how the Christmas season tends to put the most mythological parts of the Christian story front and center? Angelic proclamations, cosmic revelations, light breaking into darkness. Yet the real beauty of the season often comes from ordinary human moments. It's a time when people gather, reflect, hope, and reconnect, even if the supernatural framing of the holiday doesn't resonate the same way it once did. Sometimes the stories point upward toward heaven, but the meaning we actually experience happens right here on the ground. Welcome to Mythologizing the Bible, where we'll be taking a look at 3 readings from the Christian Bible through the lens of sacred myth. As we reflect on the readings for Christmas Day, we'll explore how these ancient texts, despite their theological layering, still echo with universal themes like hope, renewal, and the astonishing human potential for growth and transformation. In this episode, we're asking an honest question. What if the real power of Christmas isn't found in supernatural claims at all, but in the very human ability to celebrate progress, choose guiding values, and keep moving toward a better future? So grab a comfy seat, a glass of your favorite beverage, and let's look at some ancient stories together in this edition of Mythologizing the Bible, where we'll be exploring the readings for Christmas Day, Cycle A of the Roman Catholic Lectionary. In this series, we're exploring readings from the Bible through the lens of sacred myth, looking for interpretations and lessons that don't require belief in the supernatural. These texts were written by pre-scientific people, shaped by their own cultures, needs, and agendas, not as history books or scientific manuals, but as meaning-making stories for their communities. And just like believers approach these writings through the lens of faith, I approach them through a more humanistic lens, one grounded in the idea that certain foundational values helped humans evolve and flourish. Now, you might agree with the lessons I find, or you might find something completely different. That's the beauty of treating these writings as sacred myth. We're free to negotiate with the text and discover whatever insights we need right now. So with that, let's dive in. As I said, tonight we'll be looking at the readings for Christmas Day, Cycle A. Our first reading is from Isaiah. It's chapter 52, verses 7 through 10. Our second reading is from the letter to the Hebrews. It's chapter 1, verses 1 through 6. And our gospel reading is from John. It's chapter 1, verses 1 through 5, and verses 9 through 14. Now we'll start by going through all 3 of the readings, then we'll look for the messages and the main lesson in each one. Finally, we'll bring everything together, look at what it means for us today, and talk about where we go from here. And with that, let's begin. Our first reading is from Isaiah. How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who bring good news, who proclaim peace, who bring good tidings, who proclaim salvation, who say to Zion, "Your God reigns." Listen, your watchmen lift up their voices. Together they shout for joy. When the Lord returns to Zion, they will see it with their own eyes. Burst into songs of joy together, you ruins of Jerusalem, for the Lord has comforted his people. He has redeemed Jerusalem. The Lord will lay bare his holy arm in the sight of all the nations, and all the ends of the earth will see the salvation of our God. Our second reading is from the letter to the Hebrews. Brothers and sisters, in the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times and in various ways, but in these last days he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom also he made the universe. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. After he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty in heaven. So he became as much superior to the angels as the name he has inherited is superior to theirs. For to which of the angels did God ever say, "You are my son, today I have become your father"? Or again, "I will be his father, and he will be my son"? And again, when God brings his firstborn into the world, he says, "Let all God's angels worship him." And our gospel reading is from John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. All right, so let's go back now and take a critical look at these readings and see what learnings and lessons we can find if we dig around just a little bit. So our first reading was from the prophet Isaiah, and Isaiah's words here were originally a burst of joy, a community-wide exhale after years of fear, loss, and displacement. The Israelites had been ripped from their homeland, forced into exile, and now, suddenly, the empire that oppressed them had fallen. Of course they celebrated. Any of us would. And that's the human heart of this passage. The relief of a long-awaited victory. The thrill of imagining what restoration might look like. And the shared hope that the worst was finally behind them. Before anyone layered theology on top of it, this was a story about people tasting joy again after years of deep suffering. But like so many texts, later religious traditions, they couldn't resist retrofitting the story for their own purposes. Christians took Isaiah's celebration of a specific historical moment, at the fall of Babylon and the return home. And they turned it into a prophecy about Jesus, claiming that the salvation Isaiah described was actually a cosmic intervention that was still to come. It's the classic religious retcon. Look back, reinterpret, and decide the earlier writers had no idea what they were actually predicting, but they were predicting something. It's the same move people make with Nostradamus. See the pattern you want to see, even if it's not there. Unfortunately, this habit often erases the real, deeply human moment that Isaiah was describing. When we peel back the later interpretations, we find something far more universal and far more relatable. A declaration that joy is worth celebrating right now, even if the world isn't perfect yet. Isaiah's community knew their problems weren't magically solved. Returning home didn't erase the trauma of exile or guarantee smooth days ahead. But they also knew that allowing themselves to celebrate, letting hope back in, was essential to rebuilding their lives. This is a message about resilience, about shared renewal, and the power of envisioning a better future, even as we stand in a present that's still really messy. So the main lesson I got from our first reading is that we can celebrate today while hoping for an even better future. Isaiah's passage isn't a coded prophecy about a future Messiah. It's a mythic reminder that joy and hope are not opposites. We can celebrate the good that arrives after hardship and still dream of what comes next. In fact, that combination is what keeps communities moving forward, appreciating where we are while imagining something even better. We can celebrate today while hoping for an even better future. Right, our second reading was from the letter to the Hebrews, and it opens with a rather bold sales pitch. Jesus is the ultimate authority, the final revelation, the cosmic VIP above prophets, angels, and anything else people might look to for guidance. For the author, this wasn't a casual theological point. This was a strategy. Early Jewish Christians were drifting back toward familiar rituals and traditions, and this writer wanted to anchor them firmly to one ultimate guiding figure. This whole chapter functions like a persuasive argument that's meant to settle uncertainty by pointing people toward a single, superior source of truth. From a secular perspective, we don't need to debate whether Jesus is actually superior to angels, because angels aren't real, and the argument itself relies on an internal logic that only works if you accept its supernatural premises. But we can pay attention to what the author was trying to do. They recognized something true about human behavior. We're always choosing what will guide us. Whether it's tradition, authority, community pressure, personal desires, or inherited beliefs, something is shaping the decisions we make. The author of Hebrews was essentially saying, choose the highest and clearest guiding principle available. Even if we don't accept his conclusion, that instinct to choose wisely, intentionally, and with integrity, that instinct still matters. The real problem emerges when the highest guiding principle being offered is one that we can't verify, we can't question, we certainly can't hold accountable. A supernatural authority is easy to misuse because people in power end up speaking for it. And history gives us countless examples of leaders who claim divine authority to justify very harmful choices. So instead of accepting the author's claim that Jesus is the ultimate guide simply because the author says so, we can step back and ask, well, what should guide a good, meaningful human life? What values create flourishing? What principles hold up under scrutiny, align with human well-being, and produce fairness, compassion, and integrity in real time? Anyway, the main lesson I got from our second reading is that we must find and follow the best guiding principles. The letter to the Hebrews wants its readers to anchor their lives in a guiding principle they can trust. But instead of accepting a supernatural claim that we can't test, we're free to pursue guiding principles that actually show their worth in the world we live in. The question isn't, who should we worship? The question is, what values deserve our loyalty? When we choose principles that lead to compassion, courage, wisdom, and justice, we're building something far more reliable than inherited dogma. We must find and follow the best guiding principles. Okay, our final reading was from the Gospel of John. And John's poetic prologue lays out a sweeping cosmic drama. In the beginning was the Word. A theological attempt to connect Jesus to the structure, the very structure of the universe itself. But underneath all the divine framing is an idea that reaches far beyond Christianity. The notion that there is order, meaning, and intelligibility woven into reality. Ancient philosophers called it logos, the rational principle that makes understanding possible. Today, we might simply say that the universe operates on patterns, laws, and relationships that we continue to discover and understand. No miracles required. And when we recognize that we are part of this vast, intelligible universe, it inspires a sense of connection and curiosity that belongs to everyone, not just true believers. Then comes the famous metaphor, right? The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. In a religious context, this refers to divine revelation, but the metaphor stands strong on its own. Light is awareness, honesty, compassion, growth. Darkness is ignorance, fear, stagnation, or harmful habits we haven't yet confronted. Every one of us knows what it feels like to feel overtaken by a kind of inner darkness. And every one of us knows what it feels like when even the smallest spark of clarity or courage breaks through that inner darkness. You don't need supernatural intervention to understand that our choices, our relationships, and our willingness to face hard truths can pull us forward into something better. The line in this reading, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, is meant to declare Jesus as the divine made human. But even without that belief, the idea points to something more universal. The world changes when truth, compassion, and integrity become embodied. When values move from abstract ideals into our lived reality, that's when lives are transformed. Compassion in action heals. Honesty put into action liberates. Courage in action creates momentum. And John's description of people becoming children of God by embracing the light, well, we can reframe that as the very human experience of stepping into a fuller, wiser, more intentional version of ourselves. So the main lesson I got from our gospel reading is that we all have the potential to transform our lives and continue to grow. When it's stripped of all its supernatural claims, John's sweeping introduction becomes a powerful meditation on human potential. It reminds us that light, understanding, compassion, truth, light always begins as something small and internal and grows as we choose to live it out. We are not static beings. We are capable of change, courage. We're capable of continuous growth. The universe may be vast and mysterious, but we participate in its unfolding every time we take one more step toward the light. We all have the potential to transform our lives and continue to grow. All right, let's review the lessons we've talked about so far. In our first reading from Isaiah, the main lesson I came away with was, we can celebrate today while hoping for an even better future. In our second reading from Hebrews, the main lesson I got was, we must find and follow the best guiding principles. And finally, the main lesson I got from our gospel reading was, we all have the potential to transform our lives and continue to grow. Once we strip away the layers of theological retconning, these readings point us back to something deeply human. Our capacity to grow reshape our lives, and contribute to a better world. Isaiah's joyful proclamation reminds us to celebrate the progress we've made, even when the journey isn't finished. Hebrews nudges us to choose our guiding principles wisely, because what we elevate shapes who we become. And John's metaphor of light breaking through the darkness, well, that invites us to believe in our own ability to keep learning and stretching and transforming ourselves. When we combine these insights, we get a simple but powerful truth. Our flourishing doesn't depend on supernatural intervention. It depends on hope, integrity, and intentional action. Celebrate the wins. Choose your guiding values well, and keep stepping toward the light. That's how we change ourselves and everything around us for the better. So let's step back and take another look at these readings overall, see if we can figure out what these lessons really mean to us in our daily lives. To do this, I'll try to answer two questions. So what? And now what? Okay, so what? Why should we care about any of this? Well, we should care about all of this because far too many religious leaders are twisting good moral principles into tools of control. Ideals like kindness, nonviolence, and generosity could stand on their own. But when they're packaged with supernatural threats and rewards, they become very easy to manipulate. Instead of arguing endlessly about whether those religious claims are true, we can focus our energy on something more tangible, turning those ideals into real lived behavior. Actions, not doctrines, actions are what makes life better. This is important because debating true believers almost never works. Telling someone they're wrong usually just backs them deeper into their corner. They'll write you off as deceived or evil and then just stop listening altogether. But showing them a different way, right? Living out compassion, integrity, and community, showing them a different way, a better way, cuts through defensiveness in a way that verbal arguments rarely do. People may reject your beliefs, but it's hard for them to completely reject your good example. We should also care because someone has to balance out all the doom and gloom. While some folks insist the world is falling apart and everyone who disagrees with them is hellbound, we can choose to celebrate the good that's already happening. Every small act of kindness, every local success story, every community improvement shows what's possible. And when we celebrate those wins, we create space to imagine and build something even better. Small victories become fuel for bigger changes. This all matters because transformation isn't just about us. It's about believing that other people can grow too. Even the ones who seem completely consumed by Christian nationalism or fear-based theology. We won't reach everyone, and we won't do it by shouting them down. But change is always possible. If we lose hope for others, we'll stop building the future we want. But if we hold on to hope and keep living out the values we believe in, we create the conditions where real transformation can happen. The last question I'll try to answer is, now what? What are we supposed to do? Well, sometimes the most powerful way to push back against negativity and fear isn't through argument, it's through visibility. When we make small acts of goodness more noticeable, we remind ourselves and everyone around us that the world isn't defined solely by anger, outrage, or despair. Those small wins, they aren't trivial. They're building blocks for the world we want to create. So with that in mind, here's your question for the week. How will you celebrate and elevate the small wins, your own or those in your community, so they're more visible in your life and in the lives of others? This question matters because small victories often just disappear into the background unless we intentionally highlight them. Celebrating those small victories reinforces hope, it strengthens motivation, and helps shift your attention toward what's actually working. I learned the importance of celebrating small wins years ago, back in the late 1990s when I was a floor supervisor at a General Motors factory in Saginaw, Michigan. At the time, the plant had adopted the team concept, which meant supervisors and hourly union workers were expected to collaborate closely on making our operations run more smoothly. And every month, we were required to shut everything down for a 30-minute team meeting. In theory, these meetings were supposed to build engagement and communication. In practice, well, they were generally awful. Most supervisors just dreaded them. They'd stand up front, mumble through whatever corporate memo we were supposed to cover, and the employees would either chat quietly or take a quick nap. Mostly, nobody took them seriously, and honestly, why would they? But I figured, hey, if the company was going to give me a guaranteed half an hour with my team every month, I wasn't going to waste it. So I changed how I approached these meetings. I still covered the required content, but I made sure I actually understood it so I could explain it in a way that made sense. I used real examples from our department, asked questions of the people, and got people talking. And instead of just rattling off the previous month's metrics, I started working with my team leader to highlight specific wins. If we had a tough shift and someone stepped up, we made sure everyone knew why it mattered. If we had a great production run, well, we celebrated it. We recognized birthdays and life events. And after a few months, something surprising started happening. Team members started sharing their own wins and pointing out moments of teamwork that the rest of us hadn't seen. Sure, some of them teased me about it, joking about how silly it was to celebrate these little wins. But guess what? They listened. They started to participate, and slowly the team really did start coming together more. Morale improved. Support for one another grew, and our production and quality numbers just steadily climbed. All because we created a rhythm of noticing and celebrating what was working. I formalized it because that's what the situation called for. But you don't need a conference room and a monthly meeting. Even a small, informal habit of calling out the good can have a real impact. The important thing is to actually do it, and to do it regularly. When you make these positive moments visible, whether by sharing them with others, writing them down, or simply pausing to acknowledge them, you train your mind to see progress instead of just problems. Over time, this practice boosts resilience, it really fights cynicism, and it creates a ripple effect. Your celebration of good things encourages others to notice and create more of those good things. In a world that's constantly shouting about what's wrong, being someone who lifts up what's right is a genuinely transformative act for you and for those around you. Well, before I wrap things up, I'd like to leave you with one more thought. Charles Schulz, the creator of the Peanuts comic strip, once said, "Christmas is doing a little something extra for someone." He understood something profound about the Christmas season. Its real power isn't in the grand gestures or elaborate traditions or supernatural stories. The real power of the Christmas season is in the small, intentional acts of kindness that ripple outward. Doing a little something extra for someone isn't about miracles or divine intervention. It's about choosing to make goodness visible in everyday moments. Now, this ties directly into our question about celebrating and elevating the small wins. During the holiday season, people are often more open to noticing kindness, generosity, and these moments of connection. That makes Christmas the perfect time to practice intentionally highlighting the good that's already happening around us. Yes, there are plenty of horrible things happening in the world right now. Unfortunately, there have always been horrible things happening in the world. Humans, we just still haven't figured out how to live in peace with one another, especially when religion and culture tend to keep us divided. But there are also always plenty of good things happening in the world, and we can add to that. Schultz's words remind us that the heart of the season is not found in theology, but in humanity. When we take the time to acknowledge small acts of kindness, our own or someone else's, we reinforce hope, strengthen relationships, and model a way of living that doesn't rely on fear, dogma, or supernatural promises. It's the accumulation of these little somethings that transform communities, and that's why this matters. If we want to build a better world, we don't need angels singing in the sky. We need ordinary people choosing over and over again, choosing to make goodness noticeable. Christmas just gives us a seasonal excuse to practice what we should be doing all year long. All right, we've come to the end of this episode. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back again next week. But in the meantime, I encourage you to engage with our question for the week and pay attention to the important lessons you come across wherever you find them. You'll create a more purposeful and joyful life, and you'll start to feel more connected to the world and the people around you. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Mythologizing the Bible as we did a deeper dive into the readings for Christmas Day, Cycle A of the Roman Catholic Lectionary. Remember to celebrate the wins, choose your guiding values well, and keep stepping toward the light. The Bible readings used for this episode are from the Holy Bible, New International Version, NIV, copyright 1973, 1978, 1984, 2011 by Biblica Inc., used by permission, all rights reserved, worldwide. Thank you for listening. If you like this content, please consider telling a friend about it. The more people who hear the positive messages I'm sharing, the better. Mythologizing the Bible is a live-streamed series held most Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/thecodaproject. Every week, the audio of these Mythologizing the Bible presentations is released as a podcast. You can find the podcast at thecodaproject.com or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Pocket Casts. To learn more, to subscribe to my mailing list, and to keep up on everything I'm doing with the Coda Project, please visit thecodaproject.com.